I take a squad of female privates over a squad of male privates any day.
Yep.
Of course, it was completely taken out of context. Hey guys, welcome to Whiskey, Lead, and Steel. Feelings Hurt While You Wait, the official podcast of Aggressive Defensive Solutions. I'm Lee Curling, and with me, as always, Rick Sutton. So, Rick, we're going to talk about checking your ego at the door
Yes.
to be an effective learner.
Absolutely. Something more people need to do a lot of.
Yeah, I think we all do all the time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's big. You know, when you're talking about training, whether it is gun-related training, anything that is a primarily testosterone laden sport,
Yeah.
egos generally are at play.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because everybody wants to do well, and everybody wants people to think well of them.
Right.
So I think people have a tendency to just overwork it. You know, one of the things, and I'm sure you ran into this plenty in the Army, but I ran into this a lot in the Marine Corps, and some of it on the police department, but I ran into a shitload of it when I was teaching at Blackwater, which is, a guy shows up, and it's him and 12 other dudes who are all in their early 20s or early 30s, and they're all PT studs, and they shoot, and they've got good hair. Typically, if they're like a SEAL, they've got good hair, and they've got really expensive sunglasses and shit. And so they show up for this class, and they've got to impress the instructor. So they got to show the instructor what a badass they are. Well, the problem with that is, as we talk about checking your ego at the gate, the first thing is, if you're worried about impressing the instructor, showing the instructor how fast you are, what a badass you are, you're probably not paying attention to the instructor. You're not getting anything out of that because you're busy fucking around, right? And so then you start wasting time. It becomes a detriment and a drag on the training process. And then that means that because we have to watch this guy fluff his peacock feathers, the other two dudes who are paying attention, they're just standing around with their thumb up their ass, waiting for us to be able to teach what we want to teach because this guy's got to do his thing. I noticed that, and so I'm sure at some point in time everybody's been guilty of that. But I saw so much of it at Blackwater that it really changed how I viewed classes.
Okay.
Right? So when the Marine Corps or the Coast Guard or the police department would send me to a school someplace, rather than wanting to get there and show the instructor, hey, I have a baseline knowledge of all of this, and I'm not a jackass.
Right.
So you think well of me, so you want to spend your time, energy, and effort giving me an education. I changed my attitude on that. I left my ego at the gate, and I came to the conclusion of, if I wasn't already sharp, the organization wouldn't have sent me here. And the instructor figures that out. So the instructor's not going to go, oh, I wonder if this guy's an idiot. He's going to go, I'm going to make the assumption that this guy's not an idiot, because otherwise they wouldn't have spent the money sending him to school.
So I'm going to say this. As an instructor, what is your general assumption? And I mean, you kind of gave it away there. But what is your general assumption when you have a class of students? That let me set the scenario. You're teaching a intermediate handgun course. What is your basic assumption? Not they can do all of these skills, but what is your basic assumption when you look out at a dozen students before you open your mouth the first time of the class and you take a look at them?
So as I form my initial impression of them, the things that I look at right off the get-go, I look at general fitness. I look at all of their gear, and that includes their clothing, how they're wearing their clothing, how they're wearing their gear, and how much attention they're paying to the instructor as opposed to the environment. Right? So if we start the introduction process, and I've got somebody who is jaw jacking off to the side, that leads me to believe as an instructor, that gives me the impression that either A, they don't think what we've got to say is important,
Right.
because their skill set is above that, which usually isn't the case, or that they're not taking it seriously. And I've had this conversation with people in the past. Yeah, people hire you to take a class. You come out and you start talking, and they want to tell you about, well, I went to Gunsight and I went to this and I went to, okay, that's great, but if you don't think that I've got anything to tell you or train you, why did you spend all the money to come here?
Why are you here?
Now, the average intermediate class, you typically don't run into a lot of problems because most of these folks are spending their own money. So I make the assumption if you're a civilian and you're coming to a class that you've spent your own money, I'm going to make the assumption, not hard assumption because you make an ass out of you and me, but I figure you've probably done the research. You know who we are, and that's why you've decided to train with us. You've done a cost analysis and determined, okay, I'm going to spend this much money. These guys must be worth that amount of money. And then you've gone to the trouble of buying the equipment and accoutrement to make this happen. So I'm going to make the assumption that you're serious about what's going on until you prove me otherwise. But yeah, when you first look out at the crowd of people, you start making initial impressions. And I would imagine they make the initial impression when they walk up and see the instructor. If the instructor looks like a moldy old bag of ass, they're like, well, already I'm already out my money. And I've worked with guys who look like shit, but were phenomenal shooters, phenomenal instructors. But that's something that you've got to overcome. Same thing if you're a student, though. If you show up, if it's a dynamic shooting class, and in the syllabus it said, hey, we're going to be moving and shooting and moving around, and you roll up and you got winded getting out of your car, that's an issue.
So I asked Rick what I thought was a simple question, and he gave me a very complex answer, very thorough answer. I'm going to be more basic in my answer to the same question. As an instructor, when I walk up to a class the first time, there's 12 people in front of me, intermediate level class. I walk up, and my initial impression walking up is I have 12 individuals in front of me that understand what the prerequisites are and can perform those prerequisites.
Yeah.
Right? So I don't know anything about them. This is, and now, that's my initial.
Yeah.
Now, then we go into, do they look like a moldy bag of donuts? Right? They get winded getting out of the car. But the reality is, when you start talking about checking the ego at the door, it's something I learned very, very early in my military career, in going to classes and different things, is keeping my mouth shut. And it's not hey, you're in basic training or you're in boot camp, don't volunteer for anything, keep your mouth shut, keep your head down. It's not that. It is the early in leadership, I learned I'm making an assessment based on the things that I'm seeing, not the things that I'm being told. All right, so when you come up to me and you want to sell your resume to me of all the cool things you've done, again, I get the same thing. If you know all this stuff, then why are you here?
Yeah. Now,
we do sell pretty much all of our classes as being kind of a broad spectrum, right? Because our instructor to student ratio is so low, we're able to work with people that have a good competency of a skill set, that want to take it to the next level to get mastery, and then somebody that is still struggling with a skill set to bring it up.
Yeah.
Right. So, but when you have a class and I go, hey, well, I've been to Gunsight and I've taken this, and or I've been to, and it's like, what are you looking to get out? Because then my next thing is, what are you looking to get out from me? But again, I started with I'm quiet. What are the tasks ahead of me? I'm going to perform the task, and that instructor is going to know whether I understand it or I don't understand it, and he's gonna work and assess from there, not from the what did I tell him before we started stuff, right? And again, as an instructor, there's a lot going on before class. Sometimes I don't have 15 minutes for a class to listen to your entire resume.
Yep.
And I don't mean that to sound bad. All right. We love students because that's what pays the bills. But again, check your ego at the door. You want to impress me? Show me.
Yeah.
Show me.
Yeah.
To go back to the Army days, right? Back when I was in E6 as a squad leader, I made this statement at one point to somebody, and they were like, they of course took it completely the wrong way. But as an MP, right, we had both male and females MPs.
Yep.
Say, look, I take a squad of female privates over a squad of male privates any day.
Yep.
Of course, it was completely taken out of context.
Yeah.
Then to go. You give me 10 privates right out of basic training, and all 10 of them are going to go, look, Sergeant, I look at all the stuff I know. I'm going to impress you.
Yep.
And you spend most of your training time trying to correct the private that thinks he knows and is trying to impress you because I want to impress you.
Yep.
The number of male privates that generally will come in and go, I don't get this. Right? I got a basic training. I don't really get this.
Yep.
And I'm sure I was the same way. Right? I'm not saying I was the anomaly.
Sure.
Right? I'm sure I was that same private trying to impress my squad leader and my team leader and my platoon sergeant about all the cool stuff that I know because I spent a few months down at Fort McClellan, right? Versus their entire career.
Yeah.
Their squad leader.
They're 9 years in the Army so far.
Squad leader who was a Vietnam combat veteran, because yes, I'm that old, right? And a platoon sergeant was a Vietnam combat era veteran. I somehow privates somehow know that they know more about the military than those guys.
Yep.
Right. But you flip that over to a set of female privates that are fresh out. Their egos. There are those that are just as that have just as strong egos.
Yeah, they gotta be chipped.
But they're generally were willing. I don't know about now. We go back and they were generally willing to go, I don't know, and I'm willing to learn.
Yeah.
Right. And the training, the ability to do the training was easier.
Yeah.
And again, it's all about just checking the ego. And as I found, as soldiers progress, as they mature, not only in age but also in rank, they're much more willing in a lot of situations to check that ego and go, I'm here to learn.
Yeah. Right.
I'm not here to impress you today. I'm going to impress you at the end of the 80 hours of instruction we're going to do, or the 120 hours of instruction.
Yep.
In 3 weeks, I will impress you with all the cool stuff I can do. But just remember, right? In order for me to impress you, the instructor has to train you.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah.
So
That's been very much my experience, generally speaking. For most things, especially having to do with shooting, specifically, by and large, women make easier students. And I think part of it has to do with all these things. But I think a big thing that comes into play is not all men, but the vast majority of men are in competition.
Oh yeah,
We're hardwired.
We are.
We're hardwired to this.
Hardwired to do
So we're
that.
hardwired
Yes.
to find our position in the herd. Whereas, generally speaking, women don't have to worry about their position in the herd, right? Like, they don't have to compete with that guy to be the biggest, baddest dude in the crowd,
Right.
because they're not a dude, so they don't have to compete to be a dude. And so what happens is you want to show up and you want to show the instructor how competent you are, because you're the instructor and the Department of Defense is paying you $1,000 a day, but really, I'm probably just as good as you are. Well, maybe you are, maybe you ain't, right? But in either case, I'm here to teach you something that's not relevant to that. And one of the things that I noted over the years was these guys would show up and they would not leave their ego at the gate. And so their ego, they track their ego around in their pocket with them. And then they want to compete with you about something that is irrelevant to what's going on, because they want to establish, I'm at least your peer. Of course, one of the things that, we do, and it's a holdover from when I worked at Blackwater, was, okay, well, if you show up and you decide that you want to waste everybody's time by trying to prove to us what a badass you are with what you're going to do, then what the only answer that ever works for that is, okay, step up. Now I'm going to eat your breakfast for you in front of all your friends until you learn to shut your mouth and pay attention. I had a guy ask me one time, this is when I was working at Blackwater all the time, and it was like a monthly rotation. I would go like a Marine Infantry, a Marine Intel unit this month, and then the next month I'd get some SEALs in, and the next month I'd get in some ODA cats, then a month after that I'd get some PJs in, and it'd just kind of roll over and roll over. And I had a guy ask me one time, he said, well, who do you like training the most? I was like, well, the Jarheads are super enthusiastic about everything that we do. And when you tell them to do something, they do it. They don't argue with you about it. Even if they don't like it, they go, okay, I got to do it. So I like that aspect.
Because you're in charge.
Because you're in charge.
You're in charge, yeah.
So I like that aspect of it. That made it easy. And I'm going to hurt some feelings. I don't mean to, but I'm going to hurt some feelings, and these guys know who they are and they understand this. The guys who were easiest to train, the guys who showed up, dropped their pack on the ground and went, okay, what are we doing? What do we need to do? And then they would ask pointed questions if they didn't understand something, were the ODA guys. Fucking snake eaters show up.
Yeah.
Now I attribute that to the fact that by job, they're all instructors and they're all NCOs. They're all at least sergeants, so they've been around the block, and they understand my job in the Army is to go over there and build an army out of those guys. So I have to teach. So I understand what teaching involves and how difficult it is, and I understand that the Army sent me here to learn shit from you. And if I'm running my mouth, I'm not learning anything. So I'm here to learn. Right. Those guys were great. You had a good back and forth with those guys. Most of them were a little older. So they were senior in the military, and they were senior in life skills.
Yeah.
PJs, even more so. Most of the PJs that I ever worked with had been retreads. They'd been either in the Army or in the Marine Corps, and then they got out and joined the Air Force, and then they went through the, 74 years that it takes to become a qualified PJ, some crazy shit like that, right? So fucking monster training line.
You got to be a a doctor,
a brain surgeon, and a halo
surgeon,
guy, and a fucking all that crazy shit, right?
aircraft mechanic.
Yeah. Yeah, you got a fucking astronaut, whatever. So those guys were always easy to get along for the same reason the ODA guys are. And then you had guys who were amazingly physically fit, amazingly confident in their ability to do anything, and they're absolute badasses and they know it. And so you need to recognize that I am a qualified Navy Otter. And once you tell me how awesome I am, then I might listen to what it is that you have to say. Young dudes. Mm-hmm. Now you'd get a class with a bunch of dudes who were working across the street, or a bunch of guys who had been at the teams for a while. And the guy did a tour in an even number team and in an odd number team. And that guy shows up and he pays attention, and then he goes, "Hey, dude, shut the fuck up. I'm trying to hear what the instructor has to say." Those guys were great. But by and large, for the same reason that the average 19-year-old jarhead is difficult to fucking corral at Liberty, SEALs were the same kind of way. The average SEAL was. And it wasn't that they were bad guys, but they had been through something. They had been through this great, long, arduous pipeline of training that convinced them, because you have to be convinced that you're invincible to go do shit that you're going to need to be invincible to do.
So look, right.
Yeah.
Look at Marine Corps, right? You look at Parris Island.
Oh, yeah.
There is a pipeline there to teach you why you are bigger badass than everybody else on the freaking planet.
Yep.
Right? And that's what makes Marines. And then we'll send you off to go learn a job.
Yeah. And they do the same thing at Coronado.
Right. And right.
Yeah.
It's the same mindset there.
But yeah,
right?
but so I think the bigger thing is, to be a good, the whole idea here is how to be a good student, right?
Right.
How to learn more, how to maximize. You dropped $350 to come take a class from Aggressive Defensive Solutions or whomever else, right? So my advice on something like that is, we assume that you want to learn. You have baseline competencies because we published what you're going to do. And if you've shown up, you're tacitly agreeing that you know how to do that. Don't impress me. Don't try to impress me. I tell students out here all the time, look, don't impress me with how fast you get your gun out of the holster and how fast you hit the target. That's not going to impress me. Speed's going to come. Show me you got the technique. Show me you understand the concept, because that's a building block. And if you get that building block, then I can add another building block. That's the most effective way to do it. But yeah, to be a good learner, you got to I leave my ego at the gate. Every time I go anywhere, I'm in my mid-50s now. I probably didn't look at it that way when I was 23.
Oh, absolutely not. Right.
Yeah.
And I know, right. And I know I did not. Right. I think the other part of that is you talk about your place in the herd, and that, I think that is a good spot, even if it's not the, hey, you need to look at me as your peer. I want to be the alpha of this class.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, I've always been of the, don't tell me, just show me.
Yeah.
Show me by good work. I ran into something a few weeks ago, right, with somebody that not training related, but just kind of employee related, and it was the failure to ask for help when you needed help.
Yeah.
And I told this guy, nope, I already got it. I already talked to this other person. I got a plan. I know exactly what I'm doing. All right. And day went by. No resolution. Goes back out next day. No resolution. I'm like, got to get this thing done. And it was it's the hero syndrome,
Yeah.
right? I got to figure this out because I need to be a hero.
Yeah.
And instead, what I've done is I burned 18 hours of somebody's time for a 2-hour problem, right? That should be resolved. And in the grand scheme of things, I don't need a hero,
Nope.
right? I need consistency, right? I need good, consistent work. And the way you become a hero, everybody has an opportunity to be a hero sometime,
Yep.
right? But if you're spending your day trying to be the hero, quite often what happens is, oh, I'm going to make a bad pun, right? You become the zero, right? I'm sorry, I made a bad pun dad joke there, but right, what you've done is you've flipped exactly the opposite of where you were trying to be,
Yeah.
which goes into that whole thing, right? If you're trying to impress coming out of the gate because I have this big ego and I need validation from the instructor the moment I walk into the class, you're burning precious training time to try to impress somebody, and the impression would come if you're as good as you think you are, and you could be.
Yep.
Right? You could be. And in many cases, a lot of those guys are as good as they think they are.
Yep.
But we would get a lot further in the class and we get a lot more accomplished if you just show me and I'll recognize it. I'll recognize it on the line.
Yep.
Right? So.
And then the other thing to remember about that too is if you don't leave your ego at the gate, you're liable to get your ego checked, and it's liable to be problematic. Because you know who you are, you may not know who your instructor is.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And yeah, I mean, your ego may outpace your skills or not.
Yeah.
But when you decide you're going to impress the instructor by making the 25 meter shot, and the instructor then goes, okay, that's kind of cool. Hey, you see that half size at 50?
Yeah.
Here, hold on.
Ding.
Ding.
That's right.
Yeah. You want to try that? That's a little bit outside my skill set. All right.
Yeah.
Sit down and go color.
That's right.
But anyway, I mean, I don't. Yeah. Certainly, none of this was meant to go down a bad road, right?
Yeah.
But again, it just goes back to checking your ego and opening up for learning.
Yeah.
If you sign up for a class and you think the class is beneath you, you should not have signed up for a class.
Nope.
Give it away. Give the class away to somebody if you think the class is beneath you. If you signed up, check the ego, open your mind for learning, and that is where we allow ourselves to learn effectively.
Yeah.
Right?
And realistically, I'm not going to say that there aren't people who haven't gone to classes and gotten there and the class sucked. I've been to training. I showed up and went, who the fuck paid for this? Right? But I was still able to learn something. I stole this from my grandfather who said, you can learn something from everybody. You can learn something from anybody. Even if all you learn is, that guy's full of shit, don't listen to him. You've at least learned something from him. As Jeremy talked about, you might go to a class and learn what not to do. Still learning something.
Right.
And if you reach the point where you go, and I've heard the phrase, well, I can't learn anything from this guy. Well, if you can't learn something from somebody, that's on you. Maybe they can't teach you anything, but if you've already decided you can't learn anything from them, and we all do it. We all have a tendency to know our own capabilities. And I think as you get older and as you get more mature, The whole Dunning-Kruger thing comes into play. You know, at 19, you're an invincible fucking machine, and you're the greatest soldier ever. And then you're 26, and you're like, no, I don't do that whole rock climbing thing all that well, or whatever the fuck it is. So you come to understand that, and then you go, all right, I hate fucking rappelling, but I just got orders to 10th Mountain, so I'm gonna have to go fucking learn how to do this shit. And so with maturity comes the aspect of that. So if you can develop the maturity and learn ahead of time, that's the way to do it. And that was really the point of how this goes. It's not so much to pick on people or throw rocks at folks, especially make fun of Navy Otters. But the whole idea is if you can learn earlier than we did, how the most effective way for you to get in the class, be quiet, be the professional, and learn, you'll get more out of the training. And if you're paying for the training, now it's even better for you. So it makes for a more positive experience. And then also, you don't become a anecdote on whiskey, lead, and steel, feeling short while you wait.
That's right. You do not become the as you're sitting around drinking whiskey after the AAR going, I cannot believe, insert student's name.
Me and Brian Bradley were teaching a class at Blackwater and had a bunch of Air Force cats in. Great bunch of dudes. And so they had a captain who had great hair and did all the things, and he was in the Air Force as an officer, but he didn't fly planes. Fuck's that all about? But anyway, so and he was a good shooter. He was a good shooter, and he was a knowledgeable shooter. He wanted to tell us, he wanted to protect you, yada, yada, yada. And then he's standing in the back, running his mouth to these E4s who were trying to get training, can't hear me and Brian Bradley talking because he's a captain, they got to pay attention to him. So a couple times we're like, hey, sir, hey, yeah, come back and forth. Well, I took this class. Yeah, it's here, and I did there, and I went to Bill Scott Racing. So Brian Bradley cracks me up. We're about 3 days into this. So we're doing something, and Brian goes, okay, come up here. He goes, Captain, come on up here and demo this for us. So the captain comes up, and he demos it, and he does it. He does okay. He doesn't do bad, but Brian's like, okay, that's not bad. He goes, now, Rick, I want you to just run this at half speed, just so everybody can see what they're likely to look at. And he goes, run this motherfucker as hard as you can. I'm like, oh, I already knew that. So it's like a fucking bill drill or some shit. Ding, 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 ding. Run it clean, everything's good. And he goes, all right, Rick wasn't working that real hard, and he shot it in 5 seconds or whatever it was. And the guy's like, holy shit. The captain had some misses, and it was, okay. So now we're paying attention to him. So you'd think that learns him. Nah. So about an hour later, we're talking about something, and he goes off, well, when I was at Gunsight, because he kept throwing Gunsight out, which Gunsite's a great place. So Brian, former Jarhead corporal, goes, big old dip in his mouth, goes, hey, so Captain. Oh, no, he didn't call him. He kept fucking with him, calling him Mister. Say, hey, Mister, I forget the guy, Mister, and the guy was like, well, I'm a captain. He goes, yeah, junior officers are Mister. Because in the Marine Corps and the Navy, they are.
Yeah.
So he goes, hey, Mister, so yeah. He goes, now, you have a college degree, right? He goes, well, yeah, I went to so-and-so university. He goes, oh, so you have a college degree. What'd you get your degree in? He goes, such and such. He goes, all right. And then you went to like Air Force OCS. And he goes, yeah. He goes, now, did they do land nav there? Well, yeah, I have a navigation question. He goes, oh, okay. He's all right. So you got a college degree and all that. He goes, yeah. He goes, so you know that we're in North Carolina, and Gunsight is 3,000 miles west of here. And just left it hang. Which I was like, that shut him up finally.
Yeah.
Don't be that guy.
Don't be that guy. And that's it. Well, and that is a big thing. You go to a class and you want to keep bringing up, oh, I did this other class.
Yeah.
I did this other class.
Yeah.
I did this other class. I did this other, yeah.
Absolutely. I went to this class,
you know
and then I had a sandwich.
You know what? Why don't you go take another class from them?
That's right. That's exactly right.
Absolutely. All right. I think we've done it.
I think it was fun.
All right.
Hope you guys enjoyed it. We certainly enjoyed it. Y'all be safe. We'll see you next time.
He's trying. I don't really get this.
Yep.
And I'm sure I was the same way. Right. I'm not saying I was the anomaly.
Sure.
Right. I'm sure I was that same private trying to impress my squad leader and my team leader and my platoon sergeant about all the cool stuff that I know because I spent, a few months down at Fort McClellan versus their entire career
Yeah.